Hey Dungeons & Dragons community, I love D&D, and 5th is my favorite edition by far. But that doesn't mean it's perfect, and I think we all agree a couple adjustments could make things even better. Now, I've done a series of those adjustments that I'm going to be providing to anyone who wants them. There's no cost, so feel free to download them, share them, use them. In these videos, I'm going to explain what those adjustments are, how they work, and why I made any decisions for the changes I made. Today I'm going to be going through my changes for the Bard. As always, if you want, there is a link to the document in the video description, and that document contains a link back to this video for your reference. So today I present the Bard, the Treantmonk variant. So the Bard itself, I generally think is one of the more powerful classes in the game. I usually think it's maybe even the second most powerful class in the game. But I have also come to realize that I may not be in the majority on that. When I look online at what other people think of the Bard, it usually ranks around the middle, sometimes even near the bottom of classes in terms of power. And I think part of the reason for that is that we have two subclasses in the player's handbook, and one of them doesn't really work as advertised. I think if you play a Valor Bard, and the Valor Bard is kind of advertised as this battle skull that's going to be using weapons in combat, and when you make a Bard, and a Valor Bard specifically that's going to do that, then you might be lulled by abilities like extra attack that make you think that you're going to be good in combat. And then you make this Bard, you go into combat, and you're not good in combat because none of the spells that a bard has are going to help you really at all until you get to maybe 4th level spells, and then you can do something like greater invisibility. But through most levels that see the most play, you're going to send that Valor Bard into combat, and it's going to be like a fighter without a fighting style, with less hit points, without action surge, without all the things that make fighters good at fighting. You're going to have extra attack, and that's about it. You have your basic proficiencies in weapons and armor, and that's not enough. And so what you end up with is a character who is bad at using weapons, and they're using weapons instead of doing the thing they're good at, which is casting spells. So I figured the solution for Valor Bards has always been that they need spells that can help them be good in combat, and they don't have them. So I figured that was something I could fix fairly easily. Another thing people have a problem with is the counter charm ability. The counter charm ability doesn't do anything. It's supposed to be that you use your action, and then you can give somebody advantage on a fear check or on a charm check. But usually, when you are going to use that ability and they're already charmed or they're already frightened, they may not get another saving throw. So then it does nothing. And we don't want abilities that do nothing. So that ability, I get what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't really work in practice. I think we can easily make a change to make it work in practice. The final thing I think didn't work was the capstone, because the capstone is one of those ones where you have a set number of resources, and only if you're out of those resources do you get any benefit at all. And I don't like those because what you're doing is you're punishing anybody who saves the resources. So I thought that needed a rework as well. And that was based on inspiration, and inspiration isn't quite like sorcery points or key points. It's not quite as powerful. So I did think we needed to give it a little boost beyond that as well. And those were really the only changes I thought needed to be made to the Bard. College of Lore I thought worked fine. Most of the Bard abilities I think work fine. So this is going to be a relatively quick video. So let's get started. So here's the Bard, the Treantmonk variant. In the base Bard, I have made very few changes. So we begin with our class chart, and there's very few changes from the existing class chart in the player's handbook. We'll go over those in just a little bit. The class features remain the same, spellcasting remains the same, bardic inspiration remains the same, jack of all trades remains the same. So with the Song of Rest, a lot of people don't like Song of Rest. I think Song of Rest is reasonably good. If you are taking short rests and you are using them as your way to recover hit points, and I do think that's probably your most effective way to recover hit points, then Song of Rest is just a free way to add to the number of hit points that everybody gets. So I actually think it's pretty good. My only issue with it is that it's a different die type than your Bardic Inspiration die, though it tends to follow a very similar progression. But it's just two different die types that you now have to keep track of, and there's no reason for that. So the only change I've made here is Song of Rest is going to work the same, but the die type is now going to match your Bardic Inspiration die, so you don't have to keep track of both of them. It'll just be a little bit of easier bookkeeping, even though the ability itself is very similar. Then you're going to get your Bard College as normal, Expertise as normal, your ability score improvements at the normal points. Font of Inspiration is a lovely ability. We're going to keep it the same. The first one I'm going to change is Counter Charm. Counter Charm was one of those feel-bad abilities because it didn't really do anything. The original Counter Charm, what you do is, if somebody is suffering from the charm condition or the frightened condition, you would use your action, and then on their next saving throw, they'd get advantage. The problem is that a lot of abilities that cause the charm condition or the frightened condition provide an initial saving throw and then no additional saving throw. So you would do your counter charm and it wouldn't give any benefit at all. And you're using your action to use your counter charm. So that becomes terrible. It's an ability that is supposed to do something. It's kind of advertised as being able to fight off the charm condition or the frightened condition, but it didn't work. So that one definitely needed to be changed. So with Counter Charm now, at 6th level, your inspiration can disrupt mind influencing effects. If a creature you can see is subject to an effect that requires a saving throw against an effect that causes the charmed or frightened condition, you may use your reaction to attempt to bolster that creature against the effect, providing advantage on the saving throw. So really the only change I'm making here is now Counter Charm is actually going to be providing the advantage on the saving throw that the character makes against the effect. And we just simply can't have it wait until your turn because the saving throw has already occurred. So it has to be a reaction so that they can get the advantage on the saving throw they get. So I think this just changes Counter Charm to do what it should have done in the first place rather than be a useless ability that just kind of feels bad to get. Then Expertise at level 10 is going to remain the same. Magical Secrets remains the same. People love Magical Secrets. There's no reason to change it at all. I did change the capstone. The capstone before was terrible. What it did is if you ran out of inspiration and you rolled initiative, you would gain 1 use of inspiration back. And this suffers the same problem that I mentioned with some other classes that have a similar feature as their capstone, is that we are punishing anybody who saves uses of their ability. So if you saved uses of your inspiration for a rainy day, then you would get nothing from the capstone. So I definitely wanted to change that. So superior inspiration now, at 20th level, when you roll initiative, you regain 1 use of your bardic inspiration up to your maximum. So you do not need to be out of inspiration now to gain the benefit of the capstone. In addition, when a creature uses a bardic inspiration die, they may roll the die twice and take the better result. So we are boosting inspiration. We're essentially, it's kind of like advantage on the bardic inspiration die. You're going to roll it twice, take the better result. And that die type at that point will be a D12. D12 can be terrible or great. There's a huge amount of variance in what you're going to roll in a D12. So being able to roll 2 and taking the better result is going to make a significant difference, make your inspiration a lot better. Now, the Bardic colleges I'm going to be dealing with today are only the ones in the Player's Handbook, and there's only 2 of them, and that is the College of Lore and the College of Valor. People love the College of Lore, they hate the College of Valor. That's just the way it is. And the reason is because the College of Lore kind of steers you in the direction that Bard is already good at. The Bard is good as a spellcaster, and the College of Lore kind of leads you in that direction. So people liked that, and so they liked the College of Lore. And because they like it, I see no reason to change it at all. So if we look at the College of Lore here, we will see no changes from the Player's Handbook version. Then we get to the College of Valor. Now, the College of Valor was supposed to be the combat bard, the bard that uses weapons. The thing is that, again, the spell list didn't help with this, and the abilities they got weren't enough. What happened is you would end up with a College of Valor bard, and if you tried to use a weapon, you were bad at it. You would get extra attack, but there was no other bonus, so you just didn't do very much damage. So that extra attack didn't really help you that much. And again, your spell list really isn't aiding you. There was a point maybe at high levels where you could do things like greater invisibility, but certainly anything up to that, you just got nothing with the College of Valor. Now, I thought the College of Valor was still okay because you could get good armor, but again, you would use that armor and you would just be a spellcasting bard. If you want to play a bard that uses weapons, I decided that needed to change. So the first thing I did is with the bonus proficiencies. Normally you get proficiency in all martial weapons and medium armor and shields. What I'm giving is proficiency in all armor and shields. So if you want to play a bard that uses heavy armor, College of Valor is the way to do it. Now remember, there are strength requirements for heavy armor, so that might be something you want to think about. But also remember that if you don't meet those strength requirements, that doesn't mean you can't wear that armor. It just means you suffer a movement penalty. So it's not like if your strength requirement isn't there, you can't wear that armor. You can. There's just a penalty involved. So they now have that option. In addition, you can use a weapon or shield you're wielding as a spellcasting focus for your bard spells. I always figured Valor Bard always should have done that. It didn't make any sense to me that a Valor Bard needs to be dropping their rapier in order to cast a spell. So now they're going to be able to use their weapon or their shield as a spellcasting focus. But the big change I made to the Valor Bard is the spell selection. Because again, this is the reason why Valor Bards didn't work as a combat option, was because their spells didn't complement being able to fight in combat. So now we are going to add some spells to the Bard's spell list that are available only to Valor Bards. So your study of combat allows you to learn spells that increase your combat ability. When your spellcasting feature lets you learn or replace a Bard's spell of first level or higher, you can choose the new spell from the following list or the Bard's spell list. You must otherwise obey all the restrictions for selecting the spell, and it becomes a Bard's spell for you. So I should just reiterate here, this isn't additional spells known. This is like with the Warlocks, where you get additional spells on your spell list that you can select, but they will use up your spells known just like any other spell. And the reason why we're including low-level spells here is because you can change your spells whenever you go up in level. So you can replace your first-level spells with the first-level spells here, if you choose to do so. So what we're adding is, at first level, Hunter's Mark and Shield. At second level, Blur and Magic Weapon. At third level, Elemental Weapon and Haste. At fourth level, Death Ward and Fire Shield. And at fifth level, Banishing Smite and Swift Quiver. None of these spells are hugely powerful. There's certainly good spells on that list. Shield, of course, is a standout. And I think Swift Quiver probably is a standout for a lot of people. Haste is probably a standout too. But none of these spells are overly powered compared to what bards can cast already, but they happen to complement bards that are going to be using weapons. So that's why the Valor Bard is going to be able to access them, and it made sense, rather than just give them a bunch of martial abilities, to have it tie into their magic, because the whole point of a College of Valor is we are studying the bardic college that includes magic and martial ability. So we are getting some spells that aid our martial ability. And everything else for the Valor Bard, I think then we can keep the same. Once they have access to those right spells for that kind of character, then I think everything else becomes complementary to that. So combat inspiration, I already like. It can really help your allies because it can add to both damage or their armor class. They can use their bardic inspiration die when they're attacked to increase their defense. And I think although combat inspiration doesn't help your ability in combat, it does fit your idea of kind of this battle commander, where you are taking your allies and making them all better in combat. We're still going to add extra attack at level 6. I think once we're adding things like Hunter's Mark to the Bard spell list, extra attack becomes a lot better. And then battle magic will keep the same as well. And again, for the same reason, I think if we are having a character that we've now made it effective for them to be in combat, we've now made it effective for them to be using weapons, then getting that extra weapon attack becomes a lot better. In addition, I think it's complementary with some of the Valor Bard spells. being able to cast, say, something like a fire shield, and then being able to make a single weapon attack on the same round, I think really works and fits again with the whole Valor theme. So that's everything I did for the Bard. Again, I didn't do a whole lot here. I mainly took a couple abilities that were feel bad abilities. That's Counter Charm and the Capstone. And I've just made them so that they work, so that they do what they probably should have done in the first place. And we boosted the Capstone a little bit more with the second die, just because I've been boosting Capstones and I wanted to keep this one in line. College of Lore is going to remain exactly the same. College of Valor, I don't think I gave it a huge amount in terms of power, but what I have done is I've shifted their options. Now they can choose different spells than the spells they might have selected, and the spells they can select now will aid them if they choose to play a Valor Bard that is going to go into combat and use a weapon. So that's the Bard, that's the whole thing. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Next week I'm going to talk about the Wizard. Speaking of classes that probably don't need a boost, the Wizard is one of those, but there are things in the Wizard that I think should be modified just to make it work better. So we'll talk about those changes next week. And until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you next week.